And with this trade framework nearly finalized between Secretary Treasury Scott Bessent and his Chinese counterparts, the stage is really set now for the first meeting between Trump and China's Xi Jinping since Trump's first term. Joining us to learn more is the host of the show, China Insider, David Zhang. David, thank you so much for joining us this morning with Trump over there in Japan, soon to go to Korea. Let's start with this trip to Japan and how that plays into the relationship with China.
Yeah, well, the top partnership with U.S.-Japan relations, it's really about countering China. And the reason is because Japan's proximity to mainland China. And if anything goes in Southeast Asia or in the Taiwan Strait, Japan is the front line for the United States' global sort of projection of power. And so in that sense, if China decides to do anything aggressive in the region, Japan is there. If China decides to do anything aggressive in the economic space, Japan is there. So this partnership, the close relationship between President Trump and Shinzo Abe, now President Takaichi, is also something to very much look forward to in the next, I would say, half a decade or even a decade to come in terms of where things go. But I think the ultimate point here is that the United States is back with an iron-blooded ally in terms of how strong the bonds are. And that's going to be very important to counter something like the CCP.
Yeah, very interesting. And everybody now looking forward to this meeting between Trump and Xi. There's the stuff that most people know and talk about, such as the rare earths and the soybean exports, but that's not why we have China Insider host here. We want to understand the juicier stuff. So what are you looking for in this meeting between Trump and Xi?
The first one is I want to see how the tones come out. There seems to be a shift from the CCP to be much more of a friendlier tone, less of this wolf warrior diplomacy type of talk. We even had the Chinese premier say that the U.S.-China relations is like a marriage. So this sudden shift that I'm seeing after the fourth plenum meeting tells me that China is going through something domestically. It's in a state of turmoil, that it wants to make concessions for the sake of preserving the CCP itself, because the ultimate goal of the Chinese Communist Party is always about preserving the party, and it will do so by pretending to be something, such as in this case, that it's willing to work with the United States. And I think another point that I want to see is just exactly how many of those promises that Treasury Secretary Bessent said that China did go through, or at least promise on paper, would actually be finalized, and whether or not they even keep those promises within the next 6 months.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think one of the reasons why people come to NTD is they really want to get a much more nuanced understanding of what's really happening in China. Has Xi lost power and influence in China? And if so, what does that mean for this meeting between Trump and Xi?
Just based on the recent news that 9 generals of his, which he put into place to prepare for the Taiwan invasion, along with a more recent piece that his top former secretary in the military has been even removed, demoted twice now, I think that Xi has lost control of the military. What does that mean? Well, basically, even though he still holds the titles, you can see that a lot of the personnel changes, a lot of even the tones that he wants to project on the world stage has changed since we found out he's lost power. And at the end of the day, even if right now it seems like that he still holds the titles, it is the real decision makings and the styles in which he approaches diplomacy and how the CCP wants itself to be presented in the next, I would say, days or even weeks, that we really see those nuanced differences, which to me, I see it now as that Xi has lost control of at least the military and perhaps even some decision-making powers inside the party.
Within America and any westernized democracy, you can transparently see who is waning and who is rising. Can you help us understand and our audience understand what these factions are and what that means for Xi? Is he now a lame duck? Does he control other aspects of the country?
Look, Harry, there's really, I would say, 4 different factions, you can call them that. I see the PLA, the Chinese military, as sort of a slightly independent faction now controlled by Vice Chair Zhang Youxia. And I think he is in perhaps the state of holding on to the full military power. The second one is obviously Xi Jinping's own faction, some of the people that he's developed over the years being in places like Fujian province. Then you also have sort of the establishment, the say, the seniority-based faction, which is retired elders or former political officials. And then last but not least, you have sort of what I call the blood gang, people with blood on their hands, such as the Zhang faction, who's been involved in things like forced organ harvesting or a lot of corruption over the years, which has actually hollowed out China and its people's finances, and so whatnot to be pocketed into their own hands. And so I see those four factions being the central sort of power players inside the CCP right now.
Wow, that's very interesting that there are four factions. I just kind of took it as you got Xi and anybody who's trying to clear them out, but everybody maybe creating alliances and things are shifting and leverage is being held. You brought up something very interesting, this concept of a blood gang. Trump says he intends to bring up Jimmy Lai's case, of course, the imprisoned media tycoon billionaire who's imprisoned because of his role in Hong Kong democracy. But Trump did not mention Falun Gong, Uyghurs, and, of course, potentially the most egregious ethical crime that I can think of, this concept of killing people for their organs. Some say that this could potentially be the Achilles heel, because once this is truly talked about openly in every country and it's well known, that it's just too egregious to offer any legitimacy to the Communist Party. So Trump has met with Uyghurs and Falun Gong practitioners before. He does know about this. Do you expect that to break open at some point, or is that just too hot of a button to push in this particular meeting?
Yeah, no, I totally agree that it is the most egregious crimes of our time. And I think the problem right now is that the CCP has linked itself to forced organ harvesting as the existential problem or the fundamental issue. Because if this forced organ harvesting is revealed publicly, no country would dare to do any business or even engage with the CCP. And in that sense, the party itself will collapse because of just the sheer nature of it. This will be worse than some of the stuff that we saw during the Second World War. And so for them to exist, the idea is that forced organ harvesting is made public cannot happen. And so in this sense, even if the president is wanting to do a lot on the human rights front, the CCP will use its full financial and influence powers around the world, such as say, you know what, if you're going to talk to us about the forced organ harvesting issue, maybe we will not sign things like the rare earth, or we will not engage with you on trade talks. They will do that in order to preserve their own party's survival. And so in that sense, you know, it is the fundamental issue. And I think it is something that's very sensitive. Whether they talk about it, they might even do so in private to raise these issues or even use as one of the card in hand. But I don't think this is something that is ready to go public right now.
Such a fascinating illustration of what's actually at play. You have four factions all fighting against each other, but they're all united for survival. And this forced organ harvesting is the thing that they must continue to suppress. Really appreciate you joining us and sharing all these insights. David Zhang, China Insider. Thank you.